The Mafia boss arrived home to find his maid collapsed in the rain outside his gate, bleeding. He'd barely survived an ambush an hour ago. What he didn't know, she'd taken the bullet meant for him. And the person who ordered the hit was closer than he ever imagined. The gunshot still rang in Marco DeLuca's ears as his Mercedes tore through the empty streets. Rain hammered against the windshield like bullets, and every shadow looked like another assassin waiting to finish what the first one started. His white shirt clung to his chest, stained with someone else's blood. Not his own. Never his own. That's what 20 years in this life had taught him. Always be the last man standing. "Boss, you sure you don't want to go to the safe house?" His driver's voice cracked with worry. "Home," Marco said, his jaw tight. "I need to think." The mansion appeared through the rain like a fortress. Iron gates, stone walls, security cameras on every corner. Marco had built this place to be untouchable. Yet, tonight, someone had gotten close enough to put a gun to his head in broad daylight. The car slowed at the gate. Marco's hand moved instinctively to the pistol in his waistband. Old habits. The kind that kept you breathing. That's when the headlights caught her. A body, crumpled on the ground just outside the gate, rain pooling around it like a dark mirror. Marco's heart stopped. Stopped the car. He was out before his driver could respond, rain soaking through his jacket in seconds. His shoes splashed through puddles as he ran toward the figure. Even from a distance, he recognized the cheap cotton dress, the small frame, the dark hair plastered against pale skin. Sophia. His maid. Sophia. Marco dropped to his knees beside her, his hands hovering over her body, afraid to touch her. Afraid of what he'd find. She was face down in the mud, one arm stretched out toward the gate, like she'd been trying to reach it. Trying to reach him. Marco grabbed her shoulder and turned her over. Her head lolled back, lips parted, eyes closed. For one horrible second, he thought she was dead. Then her chest rose. Shallow. Weak. But she was breathing. "Sophia, wake up. Look at me." He tapped her cheek, his voice sharper than he intended. The driver appeared beside him with an umbrella, but Marco didn't notice. His focus locked on the woman in his arms. That's when he saw it. Blood. Not rainwater running down her dress. Blood. Dark and thick, spreading from somewhere beneath her left shoulder. The rain was washing it away as fast as it appeared, but Marco knew blood when he saw it. His world tilted. "Get the doctor." Now Marco's voice turned ice cold, the voice that made grown men freeze. "Tell him it's an emergency. Tell him I don't care what he's doing. He comes now, or I bury him." The driver sprinted back to the car. Marco scooped Sophia into his arms. She weighed nothing. How had he never noticed how small she was? For 2 years, she'd cleaned his house, cooked his meals, moved through his life like a ghost. Silent. Invisible. Safe. Now she was bleeding in his arms, and he didn't know why. He carried her through the gate, past the fountain, up the marble steps. Water and blood dripped from her dress, leaving a trail on his pristine white floors. The floors she'd scrubbed just this morning. "Sophia, stay with me." He kicked open the door to his private medical room, a space he'd built for emergencies. Bullet wounds. Knife fights. The cost of doing business. He'd never imagined using it for her. He laid her on the steel table, her head rolling to one side. Under the harsh fluorescent lights, she looked even worse. Her lips were turning blue. Her skin was too pale. Marco pressed his hand against her shoulder, trying to stop the bleeding. His palm came away red. "Don't you dare die on me," he whispered. "Not like this. Not without telling me why." Her eyelids fluttered. Just for a moment. Long enough for Marco to see the fear in her dark eyes before they closed again. A car screeched outside. Footsteps pounded up the stairs. Dr. Chen burst through the door, his medical bag already open. "What happened?" Chen demanded, pushing Marco aside without ceremony. The only man in the city who could. "I don't know." Marco stepped back, his hands still covered in her blood. "I found her outside. She's been shot." Chen cut away Sophia's dress with surgical scissors. The wound appeared beneath the fabric, a clean hole in her left shoulder, still bleeding. Chun worked fast, his hands steady as he pressed gauze against the wound. "This is fresh," Chun said. "Less than an hour old." Marco's mind raced. Less than an hour. The ambush downtown had been 45 minutes ago. "What caliber?" Marco asked quietly. Chun glanced at him, then back at Sophia. He pulled out a small flashlight and angled it toward the wound. 9mm. Entry wound, no exit. The bullet's still in there. Marco felt the floor drop beneath him. 9mm. Same as the gun pointed at his head tonight. Same as the shot that had missed him by inches when someone had bumped into him from behind. He'd thought it was the crowd. Some drunk stumbling into him at exactly the right moment. But what if it wasn't? "Get the bullet out," Marco said. "I need to see it. She needs a hospital." "No hospitals," Marco's voice cut like a blade. "No records. No questions. You fix her here, or she dies. Your choice." Chen's jaw tightened, but he nodded. He'd been in Marco's pocket long enough to know when to argue and when to obey. As Chun prepared the anesthesia, Marco walked to the window. The rain hadn't stopped. Through the glass, he could see the spot where he'd found her. Just outside the gate. Like she'd been trying to come home. Or trying to warn him. Marco's phone buzzed. A text from his second-in-command. "All clear. Whoever hit you is gone. No witnesses." Marco stared at the message, then at Sophia's unconscious body on the table. "No witnesses. Except one. His maid, who had no reason to be anywhere near downtown tonight. His maid, who'd taken a bullet from the same gun meant to kill him. His maid, who'd crawled all the way to his mansion instead of calling for help." Marco deleted the text. Whatever was happening, Sophia was at the center of it. And he was going to find out why, even if it meant burning his entire world down to get the truth. Behind him, Chun began to operate. The sound of surgical tools clinked in the silence. And Sophia, pale as death, kept breathing. The bullet hit the metal tray with a sharp clink that echoed through the room. Marco stood from his chair in the corner, moving toward the surgical table. Dr. Chun held up the forceps, a small deformed piece of metal caught in its grip. Blood still clung to it, dark and wet. "Hollow point," Chun said, rotating the bullet under the light. "Designed to expand on impact. She's lucky it hit bone first, or it would have shredded her lung." Marco took the bullet from Chen's hand, feeling its weight. Light. Deadly. Familiar. He'd seen hundreds of bullets in his lifetime. Pulled dozens from his own men. But holding this one felt different. Wrong. Like the universe had flipped a coin and Sophia had called it wrong. "How long until she wakes up?" Marco asked. "Few hours. Maybe less." Chun stitched the wound with practiced efficiency. "She's lost blood, but she'll survive. The real question is..." "I know the question." Marco pocketed the bullet. "And I'll get the answer." Chun glanced at him while tying off the final stitch. "Marco, I've known you 15 years. I've patched up your men, asked no questions, kept my mouth shut. But this girl?" He gestured at Sophia. "She's not one of your soldiers. She's a civilian. Whatever trouble she's in is my trouble now." Marco's tone left no room for argument. Chun sighed, peeling off his surgical gloves. "The wound is clean. I've given her antibiotics and fluids. She needs rest. And when she wakes up, she needs answers. Real ones." After Chun left, Marco pulled a chair beside the table. Sophia lay still, her chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm. The harsh lights made her skin look almost translucent. Fragile. He studied her face like he was seeing it for the first time. High cheekbones. A small scar above her left eyebrow. Old. Faded. Calloused hands resting on her stomach. Working hands. The hands of someone who'd scrubbed floors and washed dishes for people who never looked twice at her. For 2 years, Sophia had been invisible to him. Just another employee. Another face in the background of his life. Now she was the only thing he could see. Marco's phone buzzed again. He ignored it. Then it rang. He answered on the third ring. "What?" "Boss, it's Dante." His second-in-command sounded tense. We got a problem. Talk. The hit tonight wasn't random. We traced the shooter to the Moretti family. They've been moving in on our territory for months. Marco's grip tightened on the phone. The Morettis. Old rivals. Ambitious and stupid enough to think they could take him down. Where's the shooter now?
Dead.
Found him in a warehouse an hour ago. Single shot to the head. Professional. Someone cleaned up the mess, Marco said slowly. That's what worries me. Whoever ordered the hit is covering tracks fast. We need to move, boss. Hit them before they hit us again. Marco looked at Sophia's sleeping face. The bandage on her shoulder. The 4 drip feeding medicine into her veins.
Not yet, Marco said.
Silence on the other end. Then, boss. I said not yet. Double the security at the mansion. No one comes in or out without my approval. I need 12 hours. 12 hours? Marco, they tried to kill you. And they failed. Marco's voice turned cold. 12 hours, Dante. Then we make our move. He hung up before Dante could argue. The room fell silent again except for the quiet beep of Sophia's heart monitor.
Steady. Strong. Alive.
Marco pulled the bullet from his pocket and rolled it between his fingers. The metal was still stained with her blood. A hollow point. Designed to kill, not wound. Whoever fired it meant to end a life tonight. His life. But Sophia had gotten in the way. Marco stood and walked to the window. Dawn was breaking over the city, painting the sky in shades of gray and gold. Below, his mansion grounds stretched out like a kingdom. Walls. Gates. Armed guards patrolling the perimeter. A fortress built on blood and fear. And somehow, his mate had breached it while bleeding from a gunshot wound. Crawled to his gate instead of a hospital. Chose him over survival.
Why?
Marco's reflection stared back at him in the window glass.
Dark eyes. Hard jaw.
The face of a man who'd forgotten how to trust anyone. Behind him, Sophia stirred. A soft moan escaped her lips. Marco turned, watching her head roll to the side. Her eyelids fluttered, but didn't open. Still unconscious. Still fighting whatever dreams the anesthesia brought. He moved back to the chair and sat down, waiting. Because when Sophia woke up, she was going to tell him everything. Who shot her, why she was there, how she ended up taking a bullet meant for him. And depending on her answers, Marco would either protect her with everything he had, or bury her alongside whoever sent her. The bullet sat heavy in his pocket. A small piece of metal that changed everything. Marco DeLuca didn't believe in coincidences. And he was done being blind. Marco left Sophia under the watch of 2 trusted guards and stepped into the cold morning air. His body screamed for sleep, but sleep was a luxury he couldn't afford. Not when questions burned hotter than the coffee his chef had forced into his hands. The black SUV was already waiting. Dante sat in the passenger seat, his face grim. You look like hell, boss, Dante said as Marco climbed in. Drive. They headed downtown, toward the intersection where everything had gone wrong. The city was waking up, shop owners opening their shutters, early commuters shuffling toward the subway. Normal people living normal lives. Marco had forgotten what normal felt like. The ambush site was still cordoned off with police tape. Marco's connections in the department had ruled it a gang shooting. Case closed. No investigation. Business as usual in a city that had learned to look the other way. We pulled the surveillance footage from 3 different angles, Dante said, handing Marco a tablet. You need to see this. Marco pressed play. The video showed the intersection from above. Grainy. Black and white. Timestamp, 9:47 p.m. Marco watched himself walking down the sidewalk, hands in his pockets. Confident. Untouchable. The way he'd walked these streets for 20 years. Then, at 9:48, a figure appeared in the frame.
Small. Quick.
Moving through the crowd like smoke. The shooter stepped from an alley across the street. Raised his arm. The gun gleamed under the streetlight. Marco leaned closer to the screen. What happened next took less than 2 seconds. The small figure broke into a run. Crashed into Marco from behind. His body jerked forward, just as the muzzle flashed. The bullet streaked past where his head had been a heartbeat before. The crowd scattered. The shooter disappeared, and the small figure stumbled, grabbed their shoulder, and vanished into the chaos. Marco rewound the footage, watched it again, and again. "Pause it," he said. "Right there." Dante froze the frame at 9 hours 48 minutes and 23 seconds. The moment before impact. The figure's face was turned away from the camera, but Marco could see the outline. Slight build. Dark hair pulled back. Wearing a cheap jacket and jeans. Zoom in. The image pixelated as Dante enhanced it. The quality was terrible, but Marco didn't need clarity.
He knew that jacket.
He'd seen it hanging by the servants' entrance every day for 2 years. Sophia's jacket. "Son of a bitch," Dante whispered. Marco's jaw tightened. "Show me the other angles." Dante swiped to the next video. This one from a storefront camera, lower angle. Marco watched Sophia run toward him, her face caught in profile for just a frame. Eyes wide. Mouth open like she was shouting something he'd never heard over the city noise. She hit him hard enough to knock him off balance. The bullet missed, and Sophia grabbed her shoulder, her face twisting in pain before she turned and ran. Not away from the scene. Toward Marco's mansion. 6 blocks north. "She knew," Marco said quietly. "She knew I was going to be there." Dante shifted uncomfortably. "Boss, how would a maid know your schedule? You don't exactly publish your calendar." Marco didn't answer. His mind was already racing through possibilities, each one worse than the last.
A spy.
A plant. Someone sent to get close to him, to learn his patterns, to set him up for the kill. But if Sophia was working for his enemies, why take the bullet? Why save him? "There's more," Dante said, swiping to a third video. This footage was from a traffic camera, timestamp 9:52 p.m. For minutes after the shooting. It showed Sophia stumbling down an alley, one hand pressed to her shoulder. She leaned against a brick wall, her face contorted in pain. Then she pushed off and kept moving. But she wasn't alone. 2 figures appeared behind her. Men in dark clothing, moving with purpose. One of them reached for her. Sophia spun, faster than Marco would have thought possible. Her free hand flashed out, a glint of metal, and the first man went down clutching his throat. The second man raised a gun. The video cut out. "Camera got damaged in the shooting," Dante explained. "That's all we have." Marco stared at the frozen frame. Sophia, bloody and wounded, fighting off 2 armed men in an alley. "A maid," Marco said slowly. "Doesn't move like that." "No," Dante agreed. "She doesn't." Marco handed the tablet back. His mind was assembling pieces of a puzzle he didn't want to complete. Sophia wasn't at that intersection by coincidence. She'd been following him, tracking him, and when the shooter appeared, she'd made a choice. His life over hers. "Pull everything," Marco ordered. Her employment records. Background check. References. Bank statements. "I want to know who Sophia really is." "Already started," Dante said. "But boss, her file is clean. Almost too clean. Like someone scrubbed it." "Then dig deeper," Marco's voice turned sharp. "Find out where she came from before she walked into my house. Find out who she talks to, who she calls, who she—" His phone buzzed. A text from one of the guards at the mansion. "She's awake." Marco's pulse quickened. "Turn around," he told Dante.
Now.
Because Sophia had answers. And one way or another, Marco was going to pull every single truth from her, even if it destroyed everything he thought he knew. Sophia's eyes snapped open to white ceiling tiles and the sterile smell of antiseptic. Pain radiated from her shoulder like fire. She tried to sit up, but her body refused to cooperate. Every muscle screamed in protest. Where was she? The last thing she remembered was rain.
Blood.
The mansion gates so close but impossibly far away.
Easy.
Sophia's head whipped toward the voice. Marco DeLuca sat in a chair beside her bed, his dark eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her skin crawl. She was in his house. in his medical room.
Alive.
Which meant everything had gone wrong. Mr. DeLuca, Sophia's voice came out rough, broken. She tried to push herself up again. I need to go. I shouldn't be here. You're not going anywhere. Marco didn't move, didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. Authority radiated from him like heat. Not until you tell me why you were bleeding outside my gate last night. Sophia's mind raced. She needed a lie. Something believable. Something that would get her out of this room and far away from the questions in his eyes. I was mugged, she said quickly. On my way home from work. They took my bag and I ran. I didn't know where else to go. Marco tilted his head slightly. You were mugged 6 blocks from here. At exactly 9:48 p.m. The same time someone tried to put a bullet in my head. Sophia's blood turned to ice. I don't know what you mean. Don't lie to me, Sophia. Marco leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. I've had men tortured for less than what you did last night. The only reason you're breathing is because I want to understand why. I told you. You took a bullet for me. His voice cut through her excuse like a knife. A hollow .9mm. Same gun. Same shooter. I have 3 different cameras that show you running toward me right before the shot. So let's try this again. His eyes narrowed. Why were you there? Sophia's hands trembled. She clenched them into fists, trying to stop the shaking. 2 years of staying invisible. 2 years of keeping her head down and her mouth shut. All of it was unraveling in this one moment. I can't tell you, she whispered. Can't or won't. Both. Marco stood slowly, and Sophia's instinct was to flinch. But he didn't come closer. He walked to the window, his back to her. I pulled the bullet out of your shoulder myself, he said quietly. Dr. Chin says you're lucky to be alive. The trajectory was off by 2 inches. 2 inches, Sophia. That's the difference between you lying in this bed and lying in a morgue. Sophia said nothing. Her throat was too tight. So here's what's going to happen, Marco continued, still facing the window. You're going to tell me how you knew I'd be at that intersection. You're going to tell me who you really are. And you're going to tell me why a maid knows how to kill a man with her bare hands in an alley. Sophia's breath caught.
He knew about the alley.
I saw the footage, Marco said, answering her unspoken question. All of it. You fight like someone with training. Military, maybe. Or something worse. He turned to face her. So, what are you, Sophia?
A cop.
A spy? Or just someone very good at playing innocent? I'm nobody, Sophia said, her voice breaking. I'm just the woman who saved my life. Marco crossed his arms. Which makes you somebody. Tears burned in Sophia's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. If she started crying, she wouldn't stop. And crying wouldn't save either of them from what was coming. You should have let me die, she said softly. It would have been easier. Easier for who? For both of us. Marco studied her for a long moment. Then he pulled something from his pocket and tossed it onto the bed beside her. The bullet. Deformed and stained with dried blood. That was meant for me, Marco said. You put yourself between me and death. Nobody does that without a reason. So give me 1 inch. Sophia stared at the bullet.
Such a small thing.
Such a permanent consequence. She could keep lying. Keep pretending. But Marco wasn't stupid, and he wasn't going to stop digging until he found the truth. And when he did, people would die. Maybe it was time to stop running. The shooter wasn't working alone, Sophia said quietly. Marco went very still. What? The man who tried to kill you. He wasn't the one who ordered it. Sophia met his eyes, and she saw the exact moment her words hit him. The person who wants you dead is someone you trust. Someone close. Someone who knows your schedule, your routes, your habits.
Who?
Marco's voice turned dangerous. Sophia's hands shook harder. She was crossing a line she could never uncross. I can't, she whispered. If I tell you, he'll know. And he'll kill everyone I've tried to protect.
He.
Marco moved closer. Sophia, who ordered the hit. She closed her eyes. The weight of 2 years of silence pressed down on her chest like concrete. Your brother, she breathed. It was your brother, Marco. Antonio wants you dead. The room went silent. When Sophia opened her eyes, Marco's face had turned to stone. And she knew there was no going back. Marco's world tilted on its axis. What did you just say? Sophia's voice was barely a whisper. Antonio, your brother. He's been planning this for months. You're lying, but even as Marco said it, he knew it sounded hollow. Sophia had no reason to lie. Not after taking a bullet. Not after risking everything. I wish I was, Sophia said, and the pain in her voice wasn't from her wound. Marco's mind reeled. Antonio, his younger brother. The only family he had left after their father died. The man he'd trusted with his life, his business, his empire. Why should I believe you? Marco's hands clenched into fists. You've been hiding in my house for 2 years. Playing the perfect little maid while what? Spying on me? Feeding information to my enemies. No, Sophia struggled to sit up, wincing as the movement pulled at her stitches. I wasn't spying for anyone. I was trying to survive. By working for me. By staying close enough to see the knife before it found her back, Sophia's eyes glistened with unshed tears. I grew up in the South Side slums, Mr. DeLuca. Same streets you came from. I know what you built. I know what you are. And I know what your brother wants to become. Marco's jaw tightened. The South Side. He hadn't thought about those streets in years. The place he'd crawled out of with bloody knuckles and a hungry heart. Start from the beginning, he said coldly. And don't skip a word. Sophia took a shaky breath. 3 years ago, my brother Carlos worked for you. Low-level courier. He moved packages, delivered messages. Nothing important, her voice cracked. Until Antonio asked him to do something else. What? Skim money from the downtown operations. Small amounts. Untraceable. Antonio said it was a test of loyalty. Sophia's hands twisted in the hospital sheets. Carlos was scared, but he did it. Because refusing meant disappearing. We both knew that. Marco said nothing. He remembered Carlos. Quiet kid. Always on time. Reliable. Then Carlos heard something he shouldn't have, Sophia continued. Antonio was at a warehouse, talking to the Moretti family. Making deals. Promising them territory if they helped him take over. Carlos came home that night terrified. Said he was going to tell you. Sophia's voice broke completely now. He never got the chance. They found his body in the river 2 days later. Police called it a suicide. But Carlos didn't kill himself, Mr. DeLuca. Antonio did. Marco felt something cold settle in his chest. He remembered that case. Remembered thinking it was strange. Carlos had seemed fine the week before. Why didn't you go to the police? Marco asked. Because the police don't care about people like us, Sophia wiped her eyes roughly. Because I had no proof. Because Antonio is untouchable. And because she looked at him directly. Because I thought maybe you could stop him if you knew. But I couldn't just walk up to you and say your brother was a traitor. You would have killed me on the spot. She was right. He would have. So, I applied for a job at your mansion, Sophia said. Used a fake reference, a fake name, a fake everything. I needed to be close.
To watch.
To find proof before Antonio made his move. Her voice turned bitter. I spent 2 years cleaning your floors and listening at doors. Watching Antonio gain your trust while plotting your death. And last night, Marco's voice was dangerously quiet. Last night, I was following Antonio. He left the estate in a rush, and I knew something was wrong. I followed him to downtown. Saw him meet with the shooter. Heard him give the order. Sophia's hands shook. He described exactly where you'd be. What time. What you'd be wearing. He knew everything because he's your brother. Because you tell him everything. Marco's blood ran cold. He had told Antonio about the meeting last night. About the route he'd take. Antonio had even suggested the intersection, said it was safer than the usual spot. Safer. I tried to get to you first, Sophia continued. But I was too late. The shooter was already in position. So I did the only thing I could. I pushed you out of the way. She touched her bandaged shoulder. I didn't mean to get shot. I just meant to save you. The men in the alley, Marco said slowly. They were Antonio's cleanup crew. Sophia nodded. Sent to make sure I didn't survive to tell you the truth. I killed one. The other chased me for 6 blocks until I lost him near your mansion, she laughed bitterly. I collapsed at your gate thinking at least if I died there, maybe someone would ask questions. Maybe you'd wonder why your maid was bleeding outside your house. Marco turned away, his mind racing through 2 years of memories. Antonio's suggestions, his concerns, his constant presence at every meeting, every decision, his betrayal. Why did you come back? Marco asked quietly. After you were shot. After the men tried to kill you. Why come to me? Sophia's answer was simple.
Raw. True.
Because you're the only one who can stop him. And because if you died, Antonio wouldn't just take over your empire. He'd burn the south side to the ground to build it bigger, her voice hardened. Those are my streets, Mr. DeLuca. My people. I won't let him destroy them for power. Marco stood silent, staring at nothing. Every instinct screamed that she was lying, that this was a trick, a manipulation. But the bullet in his pocket said otherwise. The blood on her dress said otherwise. The 2 years she'd spent invisible said otherwise. You bled for a warning, Marco said finally. I bled for the people Antonio will kill if he takes over. Sophia met his eyes. I bled for the brother I lost. And yes, Mr. DeLuca, I bled for you. Because despite everything, you're still the boy from the south side who promised to protect us. Marco's throat tightened. He'd forgotten that promise years ago. But Sophia hadn't. Rest, Marco said, his voice hollow. I'll have guards outside your door. You believe me? Marco looked at her. This small woman who'd taken a bullet meant for him. Who'd killed to survive. Who'd gambled everything on a truth he didn't want to hear. I'm going to find out, he said. And if Sophia was right, Marco was going to burn his own brother's world to ash. Marco didn't sleep. He sat in his office, the door locked, curtains drawn. On the desk in front of him lay 3 years of financial records, schedules, and security reports. He was looking for a ghost. A pattern. Proof that his own blood had turned poison. The numbers started to blur around 4 a.m., but Marco's focus never wavered. He'd built this empire on details. On knowing every dollar, every transaction, every movement. If Antonio was stealing from him, the evidence had to be somewhere. Then he found it. A series of wire transfers. Small amounts. 10,000 here. 15,000 there. Always on different dates, always to different offshore accounts. Alone, they meant nothing. Together, they painted a picture Marco wished he couldn't see. $2 million.
Gone.
Siphoned over 18 months. Marco's hands tightened on the papers. He traced the approval signatures. All legitimate. All authorized by someone with executive access. All signed by Antonio. A knock on the door made Marco's hand move to his gun. It's Dante. Marco unlocked the door. His second-in-command looked exhausted, carrying a laptop and a thick folder. Please tell me you found something that proves Sophia is lying, Marco said. Dante's expression gave him the answer before he spoke. I wish I could, boss. He opened the laptop on Marco's desk and pulled up a series of surveillance photos. Antonio meeting with men Marco didn't recognize. Antonio at warehouses Marco didn't own. Antonio in restaurants with known Moretti associates. These go back 14 months, Dante said quietly. We had him under routine surveillance, standard protocol for all executives. I never flagged it because he hesitated. Because he's my brother.
Yeah.
Marco stared at the photos. Antonio's face in each one. Smiling. Confident. Trading Marco's trust for his own ambition. There's more, Dante said, opening the folder. I pulled his phone records. Burner phones. 3 of them. All purchased under fake names, but the cell tower data puts them in his possession. He spread the records across the desk. 17 calls to Moretti numbers in the last month alone. The last one was yesterday at 8:47 p.m. 1 hour before the ambush. Marco's chest tightened. The final piece clicked into place with the weight of a gravestone. Does anyone else know about this? Marco asked.
No.
Just us. Dante paused. What do you want to do? Marco stood and walked to the window. Outside, the sun was rising over his empire. Territory he'd bled for, fought for, killed for, and his brother was selling it piece by piece. Antonio has allies in the family, Marco said. Soldiers who are loyal to him. If I move against him publicly, it splits the organization. We'll have a civil war. So, what's the play? Marco was quiet for a long moment. Then, I need to talk to him. Face to face. See if he confesses. That's suicide, boss. If he knows you're onto him. He doesn't. Not yet. Marco turned from the window. Antonio thinks the hit failed because of bad luck. He thinks I don't suspect anything. That gives me an advantage. A temporary one. It's enough. Marco grabbed his jacket. Set up a meeting. Just me and Antonio. Tell him I want to discuss expansion into the east side. Make it sound routine. Dante frowned. And if he tries something? Then I'll know Sophia was right about everything. Marco checked his gun, chambered around. And I'll handle it. What about the girl?
Marco paused.
Double the guards on her room. No one gets in or out without my authorization. If Antonio knows she's alive and talking, he'll send people to finish what his cleanup crew couldn't. You trust her? It was a fair question. Marco had trusted Antonio for 32 years, and that trust had nearly gotten him killed. Why should he trust a woman who'd lied about her identity for 2 years? Because she bled for you, a voice whispered in his mind. Because she had nothing to gain and everything to lose. I don't trust anyone, Marco said. But I believe her. Dante nodded slowly. I'll set up the meeting. After Dante left, Marco returned to the financial records. He photographed every page, every transaction, every piece of evidence. Then he locked the originals in his personal safe, the one only he could access. If Antonio was planning a coup, he'd done it carefully, methodically, like Marco had taught him. But Antonio had made one mistake. He'd underestimated a maid from the south side. A girl who'd watched her brother die and decided that silence was worse than death. Marco pulled out his phone and texted the guard outside Sophia's room. How is she? The response came quickly, sleeping. Stable.
Good.
She needed rest. Because when this was over, when Marco had torn the truth from Antonio's throat, Sophia would need to decide what came next. Stay in a world that had stolen her brother and nearly killed her. Or walk away and never look back. Marco knew which choice he'd make if he were her. But Sophia wasn't him. She'd already proven that. She'd proven she was braver. His phone buzzed. Dante. Meeting set. Antonio says noon. His office. Marco typed back. Confirmed. 6 hours. 6 hours until he faced his brother and asked the question that would either save his empire or destroy it. He opened his desk drawer and pulled out a photo. Him and Antonio, 15 years ago.
Young. Hungry.
Brothers against the world. Marco set the photo face down. Then he started preparing for war. Marco never made it to the meeting. At 10:47 a.m., his phone rang. The guard outside Sophia's room. Boss, we've got a problem. Marco was out of his office before the guard finished the sentence. He took the stairs 3 at a time, gun already drawn. 2 more guards fell in behind him as he sprinted down the corridor. The scene outside the medical room made his blood turn to ice. 3 bodies. His men. Throats cut. Professional.
Silent.
And the door to Sophia's room was open. Marco burst through, weapon raised. The room was empty. Bed sheets torn back. Fur ripped out. A thin trail of blood led to the window. She's gone, one of the guards said behind him. I can see that. Marco moved to the window. It was open, curtain billowing in the wind. 3 stories up.
No ley.
No fire escape. No way down without breaking your neck. Unless you were desperate enough not to care. Marco's radio crackled. Boss, we've got movement at the north gate. Female. Injured. She's trying to leave on foot. Stop her, Marco barked. Don't let her off the property. I'm coming now. He ran. Down the stairs, through the foyer, past startled staff who pressed themselves against walls as their boss tore through the mansion like a storm. He found Sophia at the gate, held back by 2 guards. She was struggling against them, her shoulder wound bleeding through fresh bandages. She'd changed into street clothes, someone's spare uniform, too big for her frame. "Let me go." Sophia's voice was raw with panic. "They're coming. They'll kill everyone." "Sophia." Marco's command cut through her fear. She turned, and he saw the terror in her eyes.
Real.
"Absolute. They found me," she gasped. "Antonio knows I'm alive. He knows I talked."
How?
Marco closed the distance between them. "How does he know?" "I don't know, but they're coming. I heard them on the radio, the guards, before her voice broke. Your men are dead because of me. I have to leave. I have to run before more people die." Marco grabbed her arms, forcing her to look at him. "Running is what gets you killed. Trust me. I can't stay here. I'm a target." "We're all targets," Marco released her, turning to his guards. "How many did you see?" 3 men. Professional gear. They breached the east wall. Killed the perimeter guards before we even knew they were inside. Marco's jaw tightened. Antonio wasn't waiting for noon. He was making his move now.
Fast.
Brutal. Tying up loose ends. "He knows we know," Marco said quietly. Sophia shook her head. "That's impossible. Unless..." Her eyes widened. "The meeting. It was a setup." "What meeting?" "Antonio called it. Noon at his office." Marco pulled out his phone. No signal. He tried his radio. Static. Someone had jammed communications. "They're cutting us off." Dante's voice crackled through the static before dying completely. Then the first explosion ripped through the east wing. The blast wave knocked Sophia off her feet. Marco caught her, pulling her behind one of the gate pillars as debris rained down. Smoke billowed from where his garage used to be. "They're not here to capture," Marco said. "They're here to erase." Gunfire erupted from inside the mansion. Screams. The sharp crack of automatic weapons. "We need to move." Now Marco grabbed Sophia's hand. "Can you run?" "Do I have a choice?"
No.
They ran toward the service entrance, staying low. More guards appeared, forming a protective circle around Marco. But they were being picked off one by one. Precision shots from positions Marco couldn't see. "Snipers on the roof," someone shouted. Marco pulled Sophia down behind a fountain as bullets chewed through marble. Water sprayed everywhere, mixing with blood on the ground. "Boss, the cars are gone." Dante appeared, bleeding from a cut on his forehead. "They sabotaged the garage." "We're on foot." "The hospital," Sophia said suddenly. "Antonio doesn't know I was there. If we can reach it." "He'll expect that," Marco said. "Then where?" Dante demanded. Marco thought fast. Antonio knew his properties, his safe houses, his escape routes. Every contingency Marco had planned for was worthless now because his brother had helped him plan them all. But there was one place. One location Antonio had never liked. Called it a waste of money. "St. Catherine's Hospital," Marco said. "Public. Civilian. We hide her there under a fake name." "That's your plan?" Dante looked incredulous. "A public hospital? It's the last place I'll look." Antonio thinks in terms of safe houses and bought silence. He won't expect us to hide in plain sight. Another explosion. Closer this time. The west wall crumbled. "Decide now, boss." Marco looked at Sophia. Blood soaked through her bandages. Her face was pale with pain and fear. But her eyes were steady. "I trust you," she said quietly. Those 3 words shouldn't have mattered. But they did. "We go now," Marco ordered. "Dante, grab whoever's left standing." 2 cars. One decoy heading south, one heading to the hospital. We split their forces. They moved. Through smoke and gunfire. Past bodies of men Marco had known for years. Good men. Loyal men. Dead because his brother wanted a crown. Marco held Sophia's hand the entire way. When she stumbled, he caught her. When bullets came too close, he shielded her with his own body. Because Antonio had been right about one thing. Marco De Luca protected what was his. And somehow, without him noticing, Sofia had become exactly that. They reached the service gate. A car waited, engine running. Dante at the wheel. "Get in," Dante shouted. Marco pushed Sofia into the back seat and climbed in after her. Bullets spiderwebbed the windshield as they tore out of the mansion grounds. In the rear-view mirror, Marco watched his fortress burn. Antonio had declared war. And Marco was going to make him regret it. The hospital room was small. The kind of place where people disappeared into paperwork and nobody asked questions if you paid cash up front. Marco had paid enough cash to buy silence for a week. Sofia sat on the bed, a fresh 4 in her arm, new bandages on her shoulder. A doctor, not Chun, someone Dante had found, had checked her wound and left without making eye contact.
Smart man.
Now it was just the two of them. Dante was outside, guarding the door. The rest of Marco's men were scattered across the city, trying to salvage what was left of his crumbling organization. "You should leave," Sofia said quietly. She hadn't looked at Marco since they arrived. "Being near me is dangerous. I think we're past that point. I'm serious. Antonio won't stop until I'm dead. And anyone protecting me dies too," her voice cracked. "Those guards at your mansion, they had families.
Lives.
And now they're gone because Antonio is a traitor." Marco's voice was firm. "Don't take his sins onto your shoulders." Sofia finally looked at him. Her eyes were red-rimmed, exhausted. "How do you do it?" "Do what?" "Carry all that death. All those choices," she gestured vaguely at nothing and everything. "You've built an empire on violence. People fear you, hate you. How do you live with that?" Marco was quiet for a moment. Nobody had asked him that question in years. Most people assumed he didn't care. That men like him were made of stone and ice. "I tell myself it was necessary," he said finally. "That the violence kept worse violence away. That I protected more people than I hurt," he paused. "Most days I even believe it, but not all days."
No.
"Not all days." Sofia pulled her knees to her chest, wincing as the movement pulled at her stitches. "I grew up on Cortez Street. You know it.
Marco Nadid.
The worst block in the South Side, where hope went to die. My mother worked 3 jobs," Sofia continued. "My father drank away whatever money she made. Carlos and I learned to steal food before we learned to read. That was normal. That was life." She stared at her hands. "When I was 12, I watched a man get beaten to death over $20. Right outside my building. Nobody called the police. Nobody helped. We just stepped over his body on our way to school the next day." Marco said nothing.
He knew those streets.
Had lived that life. "Then you came," Sofia said.
Marco De Luca.
The South Side kid who'd made it out. Who'd built something from nothing. People talked about you like you were a myth. A monster and a savior all at once. She met his eyes. "My mother used to say, at least with De Luca running things, the streets are safer. At least he remembers where he came from." "I stopped remembering a long time ago," Marco admitted. "I know. I watched you forget." Sofia's voice wasn't accusatory. Just sad. "Year by year, you became what you fought against. More violence. More fear. More power at any cost. But underneath it all, there was still that scared kid from Cortez Street. I saw him sometimes. In the way you paid your maids extra during holidays. In the way you never raised your voice at the kitchen staff. Little pieces of who you used to be." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you asked me earlier why I came back. Why I took that bullet." Sofia wrapped her arms around her knees. "I didn't do it for you, Marco. Not entirely. I did it for that 12-year-old girl stepping over a dead body. I did it for my mother, who believed you were different. I did it because if you died and Antonio took over." She shook her head. "He doesn't remember the South Side. He never lived it like you did. To him, those people are just assets. Numbers. Bodies to exploit. And you think I'm different. I think you could be." Sofia's gaze didn't waver. "I think deep down you still care. You're just buried under 20 years of blood and bad choices." But the fact that you're here, protecting me when you should be rebuilding your empire? The fact that you believed me when you had every reason not to? She smiled sadly. That scared kid is still in there. He's just forgotten how to breathe. Marco felt something crack in his chest. A wall he'd built brick by brick, year by year. Nobody had looked at him the way Sophia was looking at him now. Like he was human. Like he could still be saved. My mother died when I was 17, Sophia continued.
Cancer.
No insurance, no money for treatment. She just faded. Carlos and I were alone after that. He joined your organization thinking it would give us security. And maybe it did for a while. But then Antonio killed him, and I realized something. What? That your empire was built to protect people like us. But somewhere along the way, it started consuming us instead. Sophia's voice hardened. Antonio wants to make it worse. Expand into drugs, trafficking, things even you wouldn't touch.
I heard him talking about it.
About how much money there was in breaking people. Marco's hands clenched. Antonio had always pushed for expansion. Marco had always said no. So, I made a choice, Sophia said. I couldn't stop Antonio alone. I couldn't go to the police. They'd never believe a girl from the South Side. But I could get close to you. I could watch. I could wait for the right moment to make you see the truth. She laughed bitterly. I just didn't expect it to nearly kill us both. You sacrificed 2 years of your life for this. I sacrificed 2 years for the people Antonio will destroy if he takes over. For the kids on Cortez Street who deserve better than stepping over bodies. Sophia met his eyes. And yes, I sacrificed it for you too. Because despite everything, Marco DeLuca, you're still that Southside kid. And that kid once promised to protect us. Marco stood and walked to the window. The city sprawled below. His city. The one he'd bled for and built upon corpses. I can't go back, he said quietly. I can't undo what I've done. I'm not asking you to go back, Sophia's voice was soft. I'm asking you to stop moving forward in the wrong direction. Marco closed his eyes. And for the first time in 20 years, he wondered if she was right. Marco's phone buzzed. A single text from an unknown number. Family Council. Tonight. 8 p.m. Estate. Be there or be buried. Antonio's summons. Not a request. A challenge. What is it? Sophia asked, seeing his expression darken. My brother wants to talk. Marco pocketed his phone. In front of the entire family, it's a trap. Probably Marco checked his gun, then held it. But it's also an opportunity. Sophia stood, ignoring the pain in her shoulder. You can't go. Antonio will have the whole council on his side. They'll kill you the moment you walk in. Maybe. Or maybe they'll listen to what I have to say. Marco turned to face her. Antonio's been poisoning them against me for months. Planting doubts, making promises. But he's also been stealing from them. If I can prove that. They won't care. Sophia's voice was fierce. These men don't care about right or wrong. They care about power. And right now, Antonio looks stronger than you. Your mansion is burned. Your men are scattered. You're hiding in a hospital with a maid who took a bullet for you. To them, you look weak. She was right. Marco knew she was right. But he also knew that running would only delay the inevitable. Antonio would hunt him. Kill everyone loyal to him. Take over the organization and turn it into something worse. Unless Marco stopped him tonight. I have evidence, Marco said. Financial records. Photos. Phone logs. Everything Antonio's done for the past 2 years. If I lay it out in front of the council, they'll say you fabricated it. Sophia grabbed his arm. Marco, listen to me. These men follow strength. Antonio just burned your house down and you did nothing. That makes him look strong and you look defeated. Evidence won't matter. Power matters. Marco pulled away gently. Then what do you suggest? Sophia was quiet for a long moment. Then, don't play by their rules. What? The family council. The codes. The traditions. That's Antonio's game. He knows you'll follow protocol, present evidence, argue your case like this is some kind of court. Sophia's eyes blazed. But it's not a court. It's a room full of predators waiting to see which of you bleeds first. So, what's your play? Burn it all down, Sophia said it like she'd been thinking about it for years. Not the buildings. The system. The organization. Everything Antonio wants to inherit. Make it worthless. Make it so there's nothing left to fight over. Marco stared at her. You want me to destroy my own empire. I want you to save yourself. Sophia stepped closer. Antonio wants power. Give him ashes. Dismantle the operations. Feed information to your rivals, to the police, to anyone who can tear it apart from the inside. By the time you walk into that council meeting, there should be nothing left for Antonio to take. That's suicide. I'll have enemies on all sides. You already do, Sophia's voice softened. But at least this way, you control how it ends. You decide what burns and what's saved. You protect the people who deserve protecting and let the rest fall. Marco turned away. Everything he'd built. 20 years of blood, sweat, and ruthless decisions. All of it gone. But he thought about the mansion burning. His men dead. Sophia bleeding in the rain. The endless cycle of violence spinning faster and faster until it consumed everything. Maybe Sophia was right. Maybe the only way to win was to refuse to play. I need to make some calls, Marco said finally. I'm coming with you.
No.
You're staying here, where it's safe. Safe. Sophia laughed bitterly. Nowhere is safe, Marco. Not for me. Not for you. Not until Antonio is stopped. She met his eyes. Besides, you need me. For what? Because I know where Antonio keeps his real records. The ones he doesn't show you. The deals he's made, the people he sold out, the crimes even the council doesn't know about. Sophia's smile was sharp. 2 years of listening at doors, remember? I know everything. Marco studied her. This small woman who'd saved his life. Who'd spent 2 years invisible, gathering ammunition for a war she knew was coming. If we do this, there's no going back, he said quietly. I know. The council will call you a traitor. They'll hunt you. They already are. And if we survive tonight, we'll have nothing. No power, no protection, no empire. Sophia stepped forward until she was inches from him. Good. I never wanted your empire, Marco. I wanted you to remember who you used to be before it corrupted you. For a moment, they just stood there. 2 people from the same broken streets, separated by 20 years and 1,000 choices. Then Marco nodded. Dante, he called. The door opened. His second-in-command looked haggard, blood-stained, but still standing. Get everyone we trust, Marco said. Everyone who's still loyal. Bring them to the warehouse on 5th. We have 4 hours to dismantle an empire. Dante's eyes widened. Boss, what are you? Burning it down, Marco said simply. All of it. Before Antonio can take it. Dante looked between Marco and Sophia. Then slowly he smiled. About damn time. As Dante left, Sophia touched Marco's arm. Thank you. For what? For choosing people over power.
Marco didn't respond.
Because he wasn't sure he was choosing anything. He was just finally, after 20 years, doing what that scared kid from Cortez Street would have wanted. He was remembering what it meant to be human, even if it killed him. The warehouse on 5th was barely standing. Rusted metal, broken windows, the smell of decay. But it was off the grid. Untraceable. The perfect place to commit organizational suicide. 20 men showed up. Out of Marco's original 100. 20 who'd chosen loyalty over survival. Marco stood before them, Sophia at his side. They looked at him with questions in their eyes. Waiting for orders. Waiting for their boss to tell them how to fight back. Instead, Marco told them how to surrender. Antonio wants my empire, Marco said. So, I'm going to give it to him. Piece by broken piece. Confused murmurs rippled through the group. Boss, what are you talking about? One of the older soldiers, Ricci, stepped forward. We can still fight. We have men, weapons. And Antonio has more. Marco's voice cut through the objections. He has the Morettis backing him. He has half the council. He has every advantage except one. He doesn't know I'm about to make everything he wants worthless. He pulled out a laptop and opened it on a crate. Financial records filled the screen. For the next 3 hours, we're going to dismantle 20 years of work. Every operation, every deal, every revenue stream. We're cutting it off. Marco looked at each man. Dante will feed our shipping routes to the feds. Ricci, you'll contact our rivals and sell them our territory for pennies on the dollar. Marcus, you'll liquidate every offshore account and distribute the money to our civilian employees, the ones who never asked to be part of this life. You're insane, someone muttered. Maybe Marco didn't flinch. But I'm done building an empire for my brother to inherit. If he wants to be king, he can rule over ruins. And what about us? Ricci asked. Where does this leave your men? Marco had thought about this. Had wrestled with it for hours. Anyone who wants out gets severance and clean records. I have contacts who can erase your involvement, relocate you, give you a fresh start. He paused. Anyone who stays knows what's coming. Antonio will come for us. The council will brand us traitors. We'll be hunted. Silence. Then Dante stepped forward.
I am staying.
Ricci spat on the ground.
Me too.
I didn't survive 20 years just to let that backstabbing bastard win. One by one, hands raised. 14 men. Not all of them, but enough. The ones who left, Marco gave them money and new identities.
No judgment.
Survival wasn't cowardice. Then the real work began. Sophia pulled up files on her phone, screenshots and recordings she'd been collecting for 2 years. Antonio's secret deals. His meetings with the Morettis. His plans to expand into human trafficking and drug distribution. Send this to every rival family, Marco said. Let them see who they're really partnering with. Let them know Antonio's been playing them against each other. Dante typed rapidly.
Done.
The Morettis are going to lose their minds when they see he promised their territory to the Calabrese family too. Good. Let them tear each other apart. Next came the financial records. Marco had built his empire on legitimate fronts, construction companies, restaurants, real estate. All of it carefully documented, taxed, legal on the surface. Now he was going to expose the rot underneath. This goes to the FBI, the IRS, and the State Attorney General, Marco said, uploading encrypted files. Every shell company, every bribe, every laundered dollar. They'll freeze the assets within hours. By the time Antonio takes control, there won't be anything left to control. Boss, this implicates you too, Marcus said nervously. I know, Marco kept typing. I'll deal with that later. Sophia touched his shoulder. Marco, if you send this, you'll go to prison. Not if I disappear first, he met her eyes. I've been planning exit strategies for years. I just never thought I'd use them against myself. For 3 hours they worked, dismantling,
Destroying.
burning bridges, and salting the earth. Marco contacted his civilian employees, the restaurant workers, the construction crews, the people who had no idea they worked for a crime boss. He transferred severance packages, gave them references, ensured they'd land on their feet. The warehouse filled with the sound of keyboards, hushed phone calls, and the systematic destruction of an empire. At 7:30 p.m. it was done. Marco closed the laptop. His empire, everything he'd built, everything he'd killed for, was a smoking crater. Territory sold. Money gone. Operations exposed. The FBI had enough evidence to take down half the crime families in the city, including his. Antonio's going to know something's wrong, Dante said. The council meeting starts in 30 minutes. When he realizes what you've done, he'll come for me. Marco stood, straightening his jacket. Which is exactly what I want. Sophia grabbed his arm. You're still going to the meeting? I have to finish this. It's suicide. It's justice. Marco gently removed her hand. Antonio wants to kill me for my empire. Let him find out there's no empire left. Let him face the council with nothing to offer them. Let him explain why every family in the city now wants him dead. And then what? They kill you both.
Marco smiled.
It was a sad smile. A tired smile. Then it's over. The cycle breaks. No more DeLuca Empire. No more bloodshed over power that never should have existed. He touched her face gently. You were right, Sophia. I needed to remember who I was. And that kid from Cortez Street? He never wanted this. He just wanted to survive. Tears streamed down Sophia's face. This isn't surviving. This is giving up. No, Marco said softly. This is finally making a choice that matters. He turned to his men. Anyone who wants to leave, leave now. What comes next isn't going to be pretty. No one moved. Marco nodded once. Then he walked toward the door. Toward his brother. Toward the end of everything. And for the first time in 20 years, Marco DeLuca felt free. Marco didn't go to the council meeting. Instead, he went to the police. Detective Sarah Chen, no relation to his doctor, had been investigating the DeLuca family for 6 years. She'd built cases that crumbled, chased leads that vanished, watched criminals walk free because witnesses disappeared. Now Marco DeLuca walked into her precinct at 7:55 p.m. and laid everything on her desk. I'm here to confess, he said simply. Chen stared at him like he'd grown a second head. Excuse me? 20 years of crimes. I have records, evidence, testimony. Everything you need to put me away and dismantle what's left of my organization. Marco sat down without being invited. But I have conditions. You don't get to make conditions. Yes, I do. Because without me, you get nothing. Antonio DeLuca takes over, cleans house, and you're back to square 1 inch. Marco leaned forward. But with my cooperation, you get it all. Names, locations, operations. The entire network. Chen's eyes narrowed. Why? Because my brother tried to kill me. And because I'm tired of being a monster. Marco pulled out a flash drive. This contains evidence of crimes committed by me, Antonio, and half the criminal families in the city. You take me in, you use this evidence, and you end the cycle. Tonight. What about your brother? He'll be at the Rossi estate in 15 minutes, expecting me to show up for a family council meeting. You can pick him up there. He'll have documents on him, plans to expand into trafficking. That alone will put him away for life. Chin picked up the flash drive like it might explode. And your condition? Sophia Reyes. The woman who's been helping me. She gets full immunity. Witness protection if she wants it. A clean slate. Marco's voice turned hard. That's non-negotiable. Done. Chin was already calling for backup. Anything else? Marco thought of his men. The 14 who'd stayed. The soldiers who helped me tonight. They were following orders. Reduced sentences. Most of them were just trying to survive. I'll see what I can do. Within minutes, the precinct erupted into controlled chaos. Federal agents appeared. District attorneys. Task force coordinators who'd been waiting years for this moment. Marco sat quietly as they read him his rights. Photographed him. Fingerprinted him. Processed him like any common criminal. Because that's what he was. At 9:17 p.m., word came through. Antonio DeLuca had been arrested at the Rossi estate along with 12 council members. The Morettis were turning on each other. 3 rival families were already at war over the territory Marco had sold them. The empire was eating itself. Detective Chin sat across from Marco in the interrogation room. You just destroyed the entire organized crime structure in this city. You know that. Good. It's going to be chaos for months. Maybe years. Better chaos than the machine we built. Marco met her eyes. How long will I get? With your cooperation? 20 years. Maybe less with parole. Without it? Chin shrugged. Life. 20 years. Marco would be in his 50s when he got out. An old man. Powerless. Forgotten. The thought should have terrified him. Instead, he felt relief. I want to see Sophia, Marco said. Before you transfer me. Chun considered it. Then nodded. You have 10 minutes. They brought Sophia to a private room. She looked small in the harsh fluorescent light, her arms still in a sling, her eyes red from crying. You did it, she said quietly. I watched the news. Antonio's arrested. The families are turning on each other. It's over. It's over, Marco agreed. Sophia sat down across from him. A table between them. No touching allowed. Like they were already separated by more than just wood and metal. Detective Chun says I get immunity. Witness protection if I want it. Sophia's voice cracked. A new name. New city. New life. You should take it. Should I? Marco looked at her. Really looked at her. This woman who'd saved him in every way a person could be saved. Who'd reminded him that underneath the blood and violence, he was still human. The girl from Cortez Street deserves a chance, Marco said softly. A real chance. Not running from my mistakes. Not living in fear. You deserve to wake up in the morning and not wonder if today's the day someone finds you. What about you? I'll be fine. Prison is just another cage. I've been living in one for 20 years, he tried to smile. At least this one comes with a release date. Sophia's tears fell freely now. This isn't fair. You changed. You did the right thing. After doing the wrong thing for 2 decades, Marco shook his head. This is fair, Sophia. This is me finally paying for my choices. And, honestly, he took a deep breath. I'm okay with it. For the first time in years, I can breathe without wondering who I'll have to hurt to stay on top. I don't want to leave you. Yes, you do. You just don't want to admit it. Marco's voice was gentle. You saved my life, Sophia. Multiple times. You gave me a chance to be better than I was. But now you need to save yourself.
Go. Live.
Be the person your brother wanted you to be. Sophia stood, her hands pressed against the table, like she wanted to reach across but couldn't. Will I ever see you again? Marco thought about it. 20 years. Maybe less. Would she wait? Should she? I hope not, he said honestly. I hope you're so far away, living such a good life, that you forget Marco DeLuca ever existed. I hope you find someone who deserves you. Someone who isn't broken, his voice cracked. I hope you're happy, Sophia. That's all I've ever wanted. She sobbed once. Then nodded. Thank you, she whispered. For choosing right. Thank you for showing me I still could. A guard opened the door. Time's up. Sophia walked to the door.
Paused.
Looked back one last time. Goodbye, Marco. Goodbye, Sophia. The door closed. And Marco sat alone in the interrogation room, feeling lighter than he had in 20 years. Because he'd finally done something that mattered. He'd saved someone who deserved saving. Even if he couldn't save himself. 18 months later, Sophia stepped off the bus at Cortez Street for the first time in 3 years. The neighborhood looked the same. Cracked sidewalks, graffiti-covered walls, the smell of fried food mixing with garbage. The same broken place that had shaped her. But something was different. New benches lined the street. Fresh paint covered some of the buildings. A community center stood where an abandoned warehouse used to be, its sign reading, Southside Hope Foundation. Sophia walked closer, her heart beating faster. The foundation had appeared 6 months ago. Nobody knew who funded it. The director was some quiet man who kept to himself. But the results spoke for themselves: job training programs, after-school care for kids, legal aid for families. Real help. The kind the South Side had never seen. Sophia pushed open the door. Inside, the space was bright and clean. Children sat at tables doing homework. Adults filled out job applications. A small kitchen served free meals. The walls were covered with photos, success stories, families helped, lives changed. And standing behind the intake desk, wearing a simple button-down shirt and glasses, was Marco DeLuca. Sophia froze. He looked different. Older. Thinner. His hair had gray in it now. The expensive suits were gone, replaced by ordinary clothes.
No guards.
No weapons. No empire. Just a man trying to do better. Marco looked up. Their eyes met. For a moment, neither moved. Then Sophia crossed the room. You got out early, she said quietly. Good behavior. Cooperation. Marco's voice was different too.
Softer.
Less edge. They released me 8 months ago. Parole for another 5 years. And you came back here? Where else would I go? Marco gestured at the foundation. This is where it started. Seemed right that it's where I try to make it mean something. Sophia looked around the space. at the people being helped, the children laughing, the hope that hadn't existed before. The Southside Hope Foundation, she said. You funded this. What was left of my accounts after the government seized everything? Turned out I'd hidden more money than even I remembered. Marco smiled slightly. Figured I owed a debt. This seemed like a start. Just a start. It'll take more than one foundation to fix 20 years of damage, he paused. But it's something. And something is better than nothing. Sophia felt tears prick her eyes. You did it. You actually changed. I'm trying. Marco looked at her carefully, like he was afraid she might disappear. What about you? The news said Sofia Reyes moved to Oregon. Got a job at a nonprofit. Started over. I did. For a while, Sophia touched the intake desk. But Oregon was too quiet. Too far from home. I realized I wasn't running toward something. I was just running. She met his eyes. So I came back. Figured the South Side could use someone who understands it. You're staying? If you'll have me, Sophia's voice was steady. The foundation needs a coordinator. Someone to connect with the community, handle outreach, actually talk to people instead of just processing paperwork. She smiled. I hear the current director is terrible with people. Marco laughed. Actually laughed. It sounded rusty, like he'd forgotten how. The pay is terrible, he warned. I don't need much. The hours are long. I've worked worse. And your boss is an ex-con with more enemies than friends. I've dealt with worse than that too. Sophia stepped closer. Besides, someone needs to make sure you don't slip back into old habits. I won't. I know. But I'll be here anyway. She held out her hand. Partners? Marco looked at her hand. At this woman who'd saved him, believed in him, refused to let him be the monster he'd become. He took her hand. Partners. Over the following months, the foundation grew. More programs. More families helped. The South Side started to change, slowly, painfully, but genuinely. Marco and Sophia worked side by side. Not as boss and maid. Not as criminal and savior. Just as two people from the same broken streets, trying to build something better. Sometimes at night, when the foundation was closed and the streets were quiet, they'd sit on the front steps and watch the neighborhood. Do you ever regret it? Sophia asked one evening. Giving up everything?
Marco thought about it.
About the empire. The power. The fear and respect that came with his name. No, he said finally. That wasn't living. It was just surviving with better furniture. Sophia smiled. And this. This is harder. More painful. Less impressive. Marco looked at the community center, at the light spilling from its windows into the dark street. But this is real. This actually matters. Carlos would have liked this, Sophia said softly. Seeing you here. Helping instead of taking. I hope so. Marco's voice was quiet. I owe him that much. They sat in comfortable silence, two survivors who'd found their way home. The storm that night 18 months ago had changed everything. One mate's decision to push a crime boss out of the way. One bullet that sparked a revolution. No grand speeches.
No dramatic endiness.
Just two people from Cortez Street, building something good from the ruins of something terrible. And in the South Side, where hope had been dead for decades, small lights started to flicker. One foundation. One family. One choice at a time. Redemption, they learned, wasn't loud. It was quiet work. Daily effort. The slow, steady belief that broken people could build something unbroken. And sometimes, when the night was clear, Marco and Sophia would look at each other and know the same truth. They hadn't just survived the storm. They'd become shelter for others still caught in it.